entregados a esta labor, siempre con la disposición de hacerlo mejor. Ya, todavía se escucha muy ruidoso. Todavía se escucha muy ruidoso. Pero se me escuchó cuando yo dije una cosa. No, lo todavía fue pucha. Ah, bueno. En español, acá estamos. Sí, estamos en español, ¿cierto? Ah, hola. Sí, probando sonido en español. El día de hoy, marzo 31 del 2022. Hola, sí. 1, 2, 3. 1, 1, 2, 3, 1. Probando sonido en español. 1, 2, 2, 1. 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 3. Sí. 1, 1, 2. Sigo. Cambio. Hola, sí, probando canal de inglés. Hello. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3 in English. Bien. Ok. Very good. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Listo. Sound check. 1, 2, 3. Ahora vamos con español. Hola, sí. Probando español. Prueba de sonido. Hola, sí. 1, 2, 2, 2, 2. Sí, hola. Regular, ¿por qué? Pero ruido. Ah, pero interferencia o ruido. No sé, no entiendo. I don't know. Oh my God. Hola, sí. Y entonces. One moment, please. ¿En cuál? ¿En español? ¿En cuál? One moment, please. ¿Cómo se dice he vuelto? Sí, pero ¿cómo se dice he vuelto? Hola. I am back. No, no voy a decir baby, pero voy a decir people. Hola, sí. Se. Sonido 1, 2, 2. 1, 2. Sonido, hola. Probando el canal de inglés en español. Hola, 1. Estoy probando el del canal de inglés en español porque no sé hablar en inglés. Pero sabrán disculparme mis oyentes, claro que sí. Sigamos porque tenemos que probar la calidad de lo que estamos haciendo aquí en cabina, claro que sí. Y entonces seguimos con el 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, yes. Sí. Texting zone, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Texting. Ay, sí, porque todo esto es malísimo. Bueno, malísimos, pero pues, que tú digas. me quedan grandes los... Hello, 1, 2, 3, yes. Hello, hello. Hello, my people. Presentation and distribution. Sí, puedo hablar en español, pero lo importante es que me estén escuchando la voz. La voz. No soy la traductora, solamente estoy texteando. Estamos probando el canal de inglés. Por favor, nos confirman si se está escuchando la traducción, es decir, mi voz. 1, 2, 3, sí. Texting sound. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Good morning, good morning. One, two, three. Yes, texting sound. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Hola, sí, sí. Seguimos, seguimos, no paramos. Good morning. ¿Estamos bien? Estamos ok. In English. Ok. Yes, yes. Necesita... Ya se lo paso. No, yo le doy acá. Hola, sí. 1, 2, 2, 2, 1, 1, 2, 2. No, este es inglés. Voy a traerla. Ah, sí.
did for 2020. First point, quorum verification of the assembly, approval of the agenda. Third, designation of the review commission, approval of the minutes. Fourth, the reading and approval of the management report. 5, presentation of financial statements. 6, reading of the external auditor report. 7, approval of financial statements. 9, presentation of the approval of the project for distribution of profits. And 9, approval of the performance and compensation of the board. 10, consultative vote for the board of directors. 11th, election of the board of directors 2022. 12th, fees for the board of directors. 13th, propositions and other discussion topics. First, verification of quorum and the installation. I would like to point out that this assembly was called upon with compliance of all the protocols and procedures in the press and communications in 2022. The shares listed in TSX, the company has decided to notify an access according to applicable laws and has made available to shareholders the corresponding documentation. Except objections existing, I propose to present in the reading, including in the materials, and certified that it would be presented proof that the calling was done according to the bylaws of the company and corresponding legislation. Once adding all the shares represented and the credentials obtained for this meeting, I report to you that we have accredited how many? Please, the counters, the exact amount of shares. Just give us a second. Testing, 1, 2, 3, testing. Are you okay with English? Are you getting the translation all right? And I don't see Dieter. Make sure you're okay. Good. Thank you. We are being reported from Disaggregate that we have an attendance equivalent to 62.94% of outstanding shares. Therefore, we have quorum to deliberate and make decision valid. I report that neither managers nor employee are representing shares that belong to others, so consequently, we officially install the agenda. Install the assembly. Just give me a second because there might be an update. We have 188,654,864 shares, equivalent to 62.94% of outstanding shares. Second, approval of the agenda. The votes will be done by acclamation. Please raise your hands in case of disagreement with some of the decisions being made. The Assembly approves the agenda of the day. Anyone that does not approve? Thank you. Third, designation of the Commission to review and approve the minutes of this Assembly. I respectfully propose for the consideration of the Assembly member Luisa Carmona Escobar and Álvaro Escobar Restrepo as delegates to conform the Commission to review and approve the minutes. Do you so? Luisa Carmona is a lawyer, an attorney from Uribe Now Attorneys, and Álvaro Escobar is a shareholder of Mineros and was an alternate member of the board until the beginning of 2020. Does the Assembly members approve this, Assembly members? Anyone that disagree with these commissioners? Fourth, reading and approval of the management report. As follows, we will give you a brief explanation of the most important highlights of the management report made available to all shareholders with sufficient time in advance. Thank you, Dr. Eduardo. The CEO speaks. Dear gentlemen and ladies and gentlemen, shareholders, I will present as follows a summary of results and the exercise in 2021. The full information is available in the financial statement that you'll find in your information package in your seats, and we published it in the website since February 28th. Let's begin by relevant facts and developments. Dual listing. In November 2021, we completed an IPO in the TSX in Toronto Stock Exchange and an IPO in Colombia. With the dual listing, 38,500 shares at 90 cents, with proceedings of $34.3 million. After the public offer, initial IPO, the symbol in TSX is MSA in TSX. Estimated mineral resources and mineral reserves. On September 16 and November the 12th of 2021, we presented the reports prepared according to the NI 43101 standard and for 3 mining properties, including estimates of resources and reserves effective as of June 30, 2021. These are mineral reserves proven and probable, estimated in a total of 757 million tons, with an average grade of 0.07 grams per ton of gold for 1.6 million ounces of gold. Measured and indicated mineral resources estimated in a total of 1,094 million tons, with an average mineral grade of 0.12 grams per ton for 4.1 million tons of gold. Million ounces of gold. Inferred resources were estimated in 23.6 million tons with an average grade of 2.69, amounting to 2.1 million ounces. To calculate the estimated amount of ounces, we take into account a recovery factors, because in tonnage and average there might be difference with grade and tonnage. The full information of resources and reserves, including the detail of assumptions used in the calculations, can be found in the Mineros website in the section Our Operations, or in CEDAR, www.cedar.com in Mineros profile, Colombia. Approval of environmental permits in the Alluvial operation. In October, the National Environmental Authority, ANLA, granted all the pending permits, corresponding to an extensive area of 141.6 hectares in the Lower Cauca region as a response of the change of the environmental plan that we did and presented in August 2021. And on November 18, we did a new request of modification of the environmental management plan to the authority to give continuity to our activity during 4 more years. This new area, extended area, can be seen in the slide in the screen in magenta or pink. You see the difference between the requested area for this year 2021, which were the 2 green areas, and the new areas that we're asking is the magenta or pink. We're looking for the operation to considerably expand in time, to extend LOM, not to have the discontinuity problems that we have in previous years. Mining formalization program. In 2021, we strengthened the mining formalization program in Colombia. It's a collaborative model where we are working through outsourcing contracts. Currently, there's nine operational units with more than 200 formal employments. In 2021, the production of these miners in this model was 9,632 ounces of gold. Strategic alliance between Mineros and Royal Road Minerals, Quinta Niverengo Margaritas. On July 22nd, we achieved the necessary amounts to acquire a 25% option on the mining rights of the Margaritas mining target. It's an interesting target close to ANSA in Colombia. Now let's go to Nicaragua. Consolidation of 100% of the property in Luna Roja target. In May 21st, we announced the purchase of 50% participation that Royal Road had in the Luna Roja project. It includes Monte Carmelo 1 and Monte Carmelo 2, those two, consolidating thus 100% property. So we fully own it. Now, the acquisition of the participation had a purchase price of $24.5 million. And royalties of 21% over the future production from the beginning of commercial production. Royal Road agreed an investment of exploration of at least $7.5 million in exploration in 5 years until May 21st, 2026 in the mining concessions that are part of this strategic alliance. Consolidation of 100% of the property of Vesmisa plant. On March 4th, we announced the agreement for the purchase of 10% of the shares of Vesmiso Mining, a plant dedicated to mineral processing coming from artisanal mining located in Bonanza in Nicaragua. The purchase of these shares had a price of $1.3 million. On June 27, we signed a new agreement to buy the remaining 15%. As a result of this transaction, Amco is the 100% owner of this plant. The purchase of these shares had an additional value of $2.5 million. Chile. Acquisition of 20% of participation in the La Pepa project. On December 22nd, we announced the purchase of 20% of La Pepa to from Minera Cabancha S.A., the owner of the project. As we signed a shareholders agreement with Yamana, which owned the remaining 8%. We have the option to obtain up to 31 additional percentage of participation to reach 51%, thereby controlling. We could acquire the remaining participation of 49% at the market price value. Gold price. In real terms, gold presented a negative 4% variation in 2021 between the beginning of the year at 1,898 ounces per ounce and 1,829 at the closure. The average price was $1,799 per ounce on average. You can observe the minimum and maximum prices. 1,950 maximum, minimum 1,684. During the first semester was negative because of vaccination in developed countries and perspective of economic growth globally improved. In April, the price started to go up, driven by economic packages, high inflation in developed countries, and low interest rates from central banks all over the world. The price reached a peak in June, and during the third quarter of 2021, there was a slight decline because of the recovery of the global economy. At the end of the year, it showed a slight recovery in price by inflationary pressures and difficulties in the supply chain globally. Production. In the graph, you can see annual production from 2018 up to 2021, expressed in thousands of ounces. This behavior is normal for a mining company. The normal is that production is stable with certain slight changes and only meaningful changes or significant changes when new mines come into operation. Consolidated production for 2021 reached 162,000 ounces, decreasing 3% vis-a-vis 2020. In Colombia, Alluvial production was 73,000 ounces, reflecting a recovery of 5% vis-a-vis 2020, thanks to the close to 10,000 ounces produced under the formalization program. Amco in Nicaragua produced 127,000 ounces, a growth of 4% vis-a-vis 2020, explained greatly by more purchases of artisanal material and an increase in crushed or processed tons and a lower grade. Argentina contributed with 62,000 ounces of gold, which represented a reduction of 14% compared to 2020, explained by the natural extinguishment, the slow recovery process of the leaching piles. Guidance. This is a projection. This is a sort of it's an indication of how we expect performance to be in the market. In this case, for 2022, in terms of production, cash cost, and all-in sustaining cost. For 2022, we estimate to have a consolidated production around 262K to 182,000 ounces. This projection anticipates an increase in Colombia's production, including new ounces from the formalization program that we mentioned. The maintaining levels in Argentina and a slight decrease in artisanal mining in Nicaragua. For 2022, we estimate a cash cost in a range between $1,090 and $1,180 per ounce, and an all-in sustaining cost between $1,350 and $1,400 per ounce. It's important to note that the cash cost and the all-in sustaining cost are measures of unit cost of production per ounce of gold and are expressed in dollars, usually comparable with the price of gold, to have a feeling of where the company is at in terms of competitiveness. Financial performance. Alan, our CFO, will talk later about the consolidated financial statements and separated financial statements, but I want to talk about the most relevant factors in the year, or drivers. Last year, the revenues were similar to 2020. Nevertheless, we observe a considerable decrease in net profits and net revenues. This was anticipated. Net and gross profits. There are years where companies have to invest, and these investments then have depreciations that increase, but also there are years where you have to extract gold from less profitable areas, and years where you can extract gold from more profitable areas and more rich in ore or in grade. In the specific case of Colombia, we had the stress that was produced because of the delayed in permits that have made us replace ounces of lower grade and less rich areas. In small-scale dredges and formalized miners. In the case of Nicaragua, due to COVID, contractors had lots of problems to operate, and this forced us to replace our own internal mining process for artisanal, which is, of course, more expensive as a percentage of the spot market, and that increased cost. We were close to the budget in ounces, in volume, but increased in cost. Similarly, we did lots of investments in Argentina, as it was anticipated, because our goal in Argentina was to turn around the operation. A little bit in a nutshell, I'm going to talk about every operation. In spite of these lower profits and being a major year for investments, the liquidity of the organization is still very healthy, as we see in the increase of cash position of the company. In addition to the cash of the operation, and with the simultaneous dual IPOs, we paid debts close to 36 billion pesos at the end of the year, with a cash position at the end higher than the financial debt. During 2021, the additional plants and equipment and intangibles in the three operations added up to 432 billion pesos. That is $117 million. Financed with internal resources, with debt, and the dual IPOs in Canada and Colombia. In Colombia, we invested close to 50 billion pesos, $13 million, destined for Llanuras, the new alluvial plant. We also invested in more plant and equipment and exploration. In Nicaragua, we invested close to 223 billion pesos, which is $60 million, in the acquisition of Luna Roja, in the development of the mine, in exploration, in a new testing lab and sampling man, an investment to increase the capacity of the tailings dam, to increase it to 2,500, 1,900, how much? 2,500 tons. In Gualcamayo, we made investment close to 160 billion pesos, that is $42 million. destined to operation, development of the mine, addition of plant and equipment, the mining closure plan, and increase the leaching piles capacity. As I said, Alan is going to talk in more detail about the numbers later and put some context. So let's talk about every operation. In the following slides, you can see the main metrics of performance for 2021. Nechi. Let's remember that the alluvial mine in Colombia is located in El Bagre between Nechi and Zaragoza, and the exploitation method is bucket and suction dredges. In 2021, production in Colombia was affected by the delay in approval of some environmental permits that we could compensate partially thanks to the formalization program. The formalized ounces, and as I said, are more expensive because as it occurs with Nicaragua's artisanal mining, it's a percentage of the gold price. This affected the net profit and the cash cost of the operation. Let's go to Amco operation in Nicaragua. This is located in the city of Bonanza in the northeast of the country, and includes the Panama mine and the Pioneer mine and the Bonanza model of the artisanal mining. Internal mining was affected by the lack of services because of the pandemic and the world logistics crisis. As in Colombia, we were able to compensate lower production with ounces from artisanal mining, which are more expensive, as I explained. Net profit or gross profit is affected by depreciations and amortizations, by the activation of several projects, such as the increase in capacity of the tailings dam and mine development investments. In addition to that, the first semester, Amco had high cost due because we had 2 hurricanes at the end of 2020, and these had problems for the hydroelectric power generation, and we had to use more diesel fuel for energy generation. Finalizing cooperation with Gualcamayo in Argentina. Gualcamayo was acquired by Mineros in December 2018. It's located in the provinces of San Juan and La Rioja, the northwest of Argentina. There we carried out open pit and underground mining operation. The current operation in Argentina is getting close to its end of LOM, life of mine. We've seen a reduction in production and lower profitability. The rationale when we bought Gualcamayo precisely was to make a reality the deep carbonate project, DCP, and explore mining concessions to expand. To be successful in either of these two will increase LOM, life of mine, translation parenthesis, and intensely investing in both. We want to emphasize that from its acquisition, Gualcamayo has generated the resource to finance its operation and to make these investments. That is, the operation in Argentina is not draining resources or cash from the rest of the operations in other countries. What it does is that it impacts the numbers, the EBITDA numbers, of course, and profits, and gross and net profits of the company. Growth projects and the growth pipeline. Porvenir. Porvenir is in Amco, 100% owned by Mineros. It's a deposit with silver, gold, zinc, and gold, and copper. We're estimating resources and reserves and to evaluate the feasibility of the project. Deep carbonates projects, DCP. The DCP project is in Gualcamayo as 100% owned by Mineros as well. It's a mainly gold deposit located below the current underground mine, whose material cannot be processed in leaching piles of the current mine. We continue exploring and assessing metallurgical options that would allow us be a base for future technical studies. La Pepa. Purchase option with Yamana, Chile. The project is mainly gold deposits found in the region of Copiapó in Chile. We currently have 20% participation, and as I explained before, we could acquire up to 100% after program of investment previous or schedule previously agreed. In exploration targets to maintain and increase reserves and resources, we're working in and around operational mines, in expansion projects and areas of our mining rights that have been unexplored or little explored. Strategic alliances with third parties have also been essential for the growth of our portfolio, especially in Nicaragua, with Luna Roja target and Guintarni Berengo target in Colombia. Social responsibility. In the package you have in your seats, you can observe the sustainability memoirs with a summary of our environmental management. We invite you to download it in the website www.mineros.com.co and download it from the website. Other topics. The management report printed includes information of the law, like operations with related parties and payments to Colpatria Insurance Company for 7 billion pesos, and insurance policies contracted in commercial terms, and Royal Road payments according to what was agreed in the Strategic Alliance Agreement. The certification of our managers and the board of directors as well, where we certify the compliance of all the laws and compliance of intellectual property and the free circulation of invoices. We also have the report of the Código País survey, as we see in the slide in the screen. The Código País survey, it's a third party translation parenthesis. Management and the board are thankful for our workers, our employees, and their commitment to achieve the targets and ambitious goals. Eduardo Pacheco Cortés, Beatriz Orrantia, José Fernando Llanos Candón, Dieter Jentz, Luis Santiago Perdomo, Mónica Jiménez, Alberto Mejía Hernández, Sergio Restrepo Izaza, Juan Carlos Páez Ayala, Andrés Restrepo Izaza. Thank you to the CEO. Any comments or any questions from the Assembly to the CEO? Very well. I ask the Assembly, do you approve the management report? Anyone that is not in agreement? Thank you very much. Fifth, presentation of financials, separated and consolidated financial statement as up to 31st of December 2021. Alan once here, our CFO will give a brief explanation. That will be given to you 15 days before the invitation to this session. We will open a space for Q&A afterwards. Alan, the room is yours. Good morning, everybody. Before entering into detail about the main accounts of the financial statement, I want to concur. We had a year mainly affected in costs. In the last few years, we've made major investments in the three operations, which are beginning to see depreciations and amortizations, which is natural. We've continuously increased our production in Nicaragua, acquiring new technologies and dredges in Colombia, and giving continuity to the mine in Argentina and expanding its LOM. In addition to that, we had problems in supply chains, in operations and permits in Colombia, which demanded increasing the purchase of artisanal mining in Nicaragua and drive and more aggressively drive the formalization program in Colombia. Although these increased costs, they're profitable. They are, and give us flexibility in difficult times as the ones we lived in 2021. Now let's take a look at the detail of the financial statements. Let's go to the consolidated income statement. Revenues of the company were benefited by a slight increase in gold prices and higher revenues by selling energy, which countered a slight decrease in production. Costs increased by 19%, getting to almost 1.4 trillion pesos, explained, as I said before, by the higher purchases of artisanal mining and formalization in Colombia. Close to 70 billion pesos, more depreciations and amortizations, close to 48 billion pesos again, and more cost in maintenance, materials, an increase of inventory costs, close to 63 billion pesos. Administration expenses also increased by 21%, explained mainly by more payment of consultants and external and the renewal of our insurance programs and policies. The net result of the year had a decrease of 31%, close to 161 billion pesos. The result was affected mainly by what was explained a minute ago. In addition, we had more expenditure in exploration related to the DCP project in Argentina and exploration targets in Nicaragua, including Luna Roja. It's necessary to invest in exploration and infrastructure to achieve the maintenance and growth of a mining company in the coming years. These expenditures were countered by lower expenditures related to the listing in TSX versus what we spent in 2020, and the recognition of the value of the investment in La Pepa project for almost 21 billion pesos. Before going into the explanation of the balance sheet, I would like to emphasize the depreciation and amortization account. The addition of these two in constant expenditure was almost 184 billion pesos. That's an amount that affected net profits in a significant or material but not cash position. Our cash generation is very healthy and solid. During the year, we invested in sustenance and growth. We decreased our financial debt and paid dividends without putting the company at peril or risk of liquidity, as we'll see later in the cash movements in a few slides. I'm sorry, if they don't use the mic, I'm not able to translate. 184 billion, the depreciation is the sum of those two accounts. Yes, there's the sum of the two, depreciation and amortization. 48 billion more. Now, let's take a look at the general and the consolidated balance sheet. The assets of the company grew by 24%, getting to $2.3 billion. Luna Roja is the biggest element, 20% in La Pepa in Chile, and the higher cash position at the end of the year. Liabilities increased by 8%. It's 846 billion pesos. Given the increase in provisions because of mine closure regulation, the increasing accounts payable to suppliers and creditors, and more civil works in Colombia, and what we call translation parentheses civil works in exchange for taxes. So that was an increase. Instead of paying taxes, they provide civil works, so on. Translation parentheses. Part of the resources of the dual IPOs in Canada and Colombia, part of the proceedings were used for the payment of this financial debt. The net worth was increased by 35%, getting to 1.4 trillion pesos. Placement after the simultaneous IPO by 117 billion. The increase in approved reserves in the previous assembly, and by the increase in accumulated result by 185 billion. This last derived mainly by the change of our current functional currency to dollars, so that was a positive effect. Let's go to cash and equivalents and cash equivalents. During 2021, the cash and cash equivalents had an increase close to 43 billion pesos. Operations generated close to 327 billion pesos. The cash used in investment activities was 291 billion pesos. This includes the purchase of 50% of Luna Roja, close to 97 billion, so it's almost a third, and investment for the continuity of operation in Argentina, close to 85 billion, and other sustenance and growth and sustenance targets in Nicaragua. And in the cash flow for financing used in financing, 29 billion, correspond to the proceeds from the simultaneous IPO, 117 billion pesos, and revenues coming from loans for 116 billion. These are countered by the payment of financial obligations and interest for 196 billion and the payment of dividends for 66 billion. Let's go to the separated or disaggregate financial statements. In 2021, revenues increased in 13.700 billion, 3% vis-a-vis 2020, mostly benefited by better positions in hedging operations, 18 billion, and better revenues through royalties that amounted to 5 billion, countered by lower sales of gold that amounted to 9 billion. Revenues through participation of the subsidiaries were reduced by 34% compared to 2020, which was more concentrated because of less profits in the three operations of the three subsidiaries. We had a decrease of 11 billion in Nicaragua, of pesos, Colombia close to 47 billion, in Argentina 48 billion pesos. Decrease in Nicaragua and Colombia is explained, as I've been mentioning, by higher purchases of material and ore from formalized and artisanal mining, which is more expensive from our internal operations or fully owned operation. In Argentina, the decrease in profits is due to lower production, and the increase in depreciations and amortizations results from investment that we've been carrying out during these years. Lower revenues through participation from subsidiaries were translated into a decrease of the gross profit of 84 billion, that is 25%. The net result of the year had a decrease, total net decrease of 31% of 73 billion. In addition to this, we had savings for lower expenses in corporate projects related to the dual listing and implementation of SAP in Nicaragua, which occurred in 2020. Let's take a look at the general separated balance sheet. Assets of the company grew by 19%, 280 billion pesos, getting to 1.7 trillion pesos, mostly explained by the increase in the valuation of subsidiaries, mainly the Amco's increased valuation from 428 billion to 658 billion in value. Liabilities decreased by 29%, placing the company at 254 billion because of the payment of the financial debt and the reduction of credits and accounts payable to subsidiaries. Net worth was increased by 35%, getting to 1.4 trillion. Explained as in the consolidated by the placement of after the IPOs, the increase in reserves, and explained also by the increase in the accumulated integrated result. Any additional questions? $29.9 million in profits. With the generation of premium, that's the net after the cost of TSX, which include the payments of commissions to investment bankers. But I think it's very too much efforts for just 21 billion pesos. It's very little, I believe, in an operation that it seems a very small amount. That profits in what we call the premium, in the premium. As the second thing is that there is a question related to the payment of services of 32 billion pesos. This is a consulting, advice, and insurance. In the year 2020, it's a little less. There's an additional cost of 9 billion. And the third question, also in the diverse or others account, 12 billion pesos in inventory in Gualcamayo. There's no control, so there's no proper control of inventories. Basically, those are the three questions. Well, the first question, I believe I answered, which is the $29 million, 29 million. Let me answer the second and the third meanwhile. The services increased last year mainly because of the listing in the stock exchanges. We had to hire more advisors and specialized consultants and support to calculate mine closure liabilities, more audits to fully audit our affiliate companies in the 3 countries, much more specialized auditors. That's more advisors for the listings. And the insurance plan, the insurance premiums increased. As a result of the pandemic, they increased. So the insurance cost increased. So those two were the main buckets of increase. The third question, which is about inventories. Indeed, we had inventories with which we had bought the company. They were there. that use certain type of machinery, but as the mine extinguishes its resources, or some machines are obsolete, and these inventories were destined for those machines that are obsolete. So that's a very technical mining. Is part of the purchase, and was anticipated. If you remind us, where's the page of the question? The premium, the 29.5 billion, the 29.5 million premium, the placement premium of shares. Placement premium is in dollars or in pesos? In dollars. The placement, the gross premium was 35 to 34 million, but after discounting commissions to the investment bankers and all the legal costs, the final net result is $29 million that you see in that page. So it's an error. It says pesos, but it should be dollars. It's an error. It's in dollars. It should be dollars. I'm sorry, Dieter, but he's not using the mic, so I'm not able to follow. We need to review we offer is not what you're saying. I believe in the figures printed. I suppose that there is a good review and a good accountant and a good auditor to present. So we excuse ourselves if there's nothing to say. There was the only thing that we can say, it's a little bit as an explanation. Usually assemblies in Toronto are done in the second quarter, because the quantity of information is overwhelming, the amount of information. And this is the first year that we have to do both things, and we were working non-stop against the clock. So frankly, there's no excuse. We had to fulfill Colombia's regulation and Toronto's, and to top it all, the Colombia's superintendent forced us to translate every single document, so it multiplied by 10 the workload. So we offer excuses for that error. Another comment, please. I want to, it's a very high number, then it's a high number, 184 billion pesos in depreciation. So I would like to ask if there was any change in the depreciation policy. Could you expand on that? Very well. The truth is that there was no substantial change in the policy. But these companies work like this in the mining industry. These types of have times where they invest intensely. Investment in Nicaragua, we had to do a tailings dam, which was activated last year in 2021 in the books. In Nicaragua, we have 3 tailings dams. 2 are closed and completely unproductive, and we had to build a completely new tailings dam. So during several years we were investing in the construction, and it was only activated until last year, and we began depreciation, and that impacts aggressively. In Argentina, a special phenomenon is occurring, is that depreciations in mining companies have to be done with the life of mine. It's the regulation there. So all the depreciations are in very few years. We have 3 years of LOM, so it has to be in sync. So it practically goes to cost. And last year was a year where we had to invest a lot in expanding the capacity of the open pit. So that's going to be in the next 2 or 3 years. From the point of view of cash flow, the impact is not so serious, but from the numbers at the end, yes, and accounting results, yes. But in the end, depreciations allow you to achieve the state shares part of the investment with taxes. It doesn't look that good in the books, but it's the reality of this operation. What are we doing? We're going through a time of high investments so that in the following years we'll reap the fruits when the operations kick in and are commissioned in Nicaragua and in Argentina, will allow us to increase the number of ounces. That doesn't happen continuously and linearly. The behavior of a mining company is different from a commercial or service company that gains market share and grows and grows. Mining companies grow in leaps and bounds. We made a leap when we we increased the ounces in Nicaragua. We made a leap when we embedded the ounces from Argentina. We're not going to give a new leap until we incorporate new ounces from a new project. So what projects do we have? Porvenir and DCP. And that's the reality of this type of business. As I said, it was not a year from the results point of view. Is not a spectacular year, but from the cash flow position, the results are healthy, and we're doing the investment needed for the company to grow. Thank you, Dr. Andres. There is a detail there that is good to bear in mind, which is I don't know if it's that the policy of depreciations is altered by quarter or quarterly, because the truth is that the quarterly results of Mineros in the last 2 years have sharp changes, or in between a quarter and another. And I believe this generates some alarm to the market. And so in the third quarter of this year, there was a change, an abrupt change after a positive trend in the last 2 quarters. So I don't know if there's something that might stabilize or standardize or apply, and simply an observation. Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other comments or any other questions? Reading of the external auditor report from the external auditor. I request Olga Cabrales from the firm Deloitte and Touch to read her report of the financial statements, separated and consolidated financial statements in as of December 31st, 2021. I'm going to give the opinion of the external auditor, and the opinion vis-a-vis financial statements. You've had this report in the inspection period. I'm going to emphasize the most important points. Mineros shareholders, I've audited the financials separated and statements which encompass the financial situation as of 31st of December 2021. Financial results and other comprehensive results and changes in net worth and cash flows of the year ended in that date, and notes to the financial statements, including significant accounting policy. In my opinion, financial separated and adjoined financial statements taken from the books reasonably present in all significant aspects the real and fair situation of the company in December 31st, 2021, and the result of the operation and cash flows in that fiscal year, according to international regulation and compliance with accepted norms in Colombia. I've carried out my audit according to the accepted international regulation. My responsibility according to this regulation are described further in the responsibility section. Responsibility of the auditor. I'm independent according to ethical requirements relevant for my audit of the financial statements in Colombia, and I fulfill the other responsibilities of ethics and compliance with all these requirements. I consider that the evidence obtained for audit is sufficient and appropriate to provide a reasonable base to express our opinion. Key issues of the audit are those issues that, according to my professional judgments, were relevant in the financial statements in the current period. They were covered in our audit, seen together, and the formation of our opinion. I don't express a separate opinion. A key issue, impairment of long-term assets, specifically cash-generating units, as is described in Note 25 to the separated financial statements. Management recognized the reversion of a previous impairment in Nicaragua for 61 billion pesos, and recognized an impairment in the UG Gualcamayo by 53 billion pesos. Colombian pesos. Management estimates a recovered value based in discounted cash flows on the business units The value in estimated use. The value includes judgment and significant assumptions related to expected revenues and the discount rate applied for future cash flows, estimated cash flows. The model evaluation is sensible to the discount rate and price changes. Main procedures for audited related to the reversion of the discounted cash flows prepared by management for Amco, Nicaragua, and Gualcamayo, assessing the risk of the value of use prepared by management and relevant assumptions of discounted cash flows, to evaluate the design and implementation of relevant controls, to develop estimates of recoverable values of the business units, Gualcamayo, Hemco, and Gualcamayo, Nicaragua, with the assistance of valuation specialists to evaluate the appropriate discounted cash flows prepared by management for every business unit, assess determining the discount rates and future cash flows and future revenues from gold. Those responsible from governance in financial statements. Management is responsible for the proper preparation and presentation of financial statements according to Colombian for accounting practices accepted in Colombia, and for the correct presentation of financial statements free of significant errors, be it by fault or error. Responsibility of the auditor. I'm going to read the most relevant paragraphs. My objective is to obtain relative reasonable certainty that financial statements are free of material error due to fraud or error, and issue an audit report containing, in my opinion, a fair and reasonable view. Reasonable doesn't mean 100%. According to international norms accepted in Colombia, there might be a material error. Errors can be due to error or fraud, and they're considered material if individually or together. We expect that they influence economic decisions of users made decisions based on financial statements. As part of the audit, according to international regulation accepted in Colombia, I apply a professional judgment and maintain an attitude of professionalism during the entire audit. I provide those in charge of governance related to the independence. I communicate all the relationships and issues of independence that can affect, or relationships that can affect my independence and the corresponding safeguards. From issues communicated to those in charge of governance, I determined that these issues were fully important for the audit in the financial statement in the current period. Therefore, these are the key audit issues. I describe these issues in my audit report unless the laws and regulations avoid the public disclosures of these issues, or when extremely rare circumstances determine that an issue should not be communicated in the audit report because in a reasonable fashion we could expect adverse consequences by doing so, which would be more outweigh the benefits and of public interest or benefit. As we indicated in note 1.2 to the financial statements, they've been prepared to fulfill legal compliance or current compliance. They should be read together with the consolidated financial statements that are issued separately. Financial statements as of 31st 2020, which are included for comparative purposes, were also audited by us, and we also expressed a positive and reasonable opinion in 2021. According to the scope of my audit, the company has followed compliance and accounting techniques, operations registered in accounting book, correspondence and documentation and supports. The minutes and the registry of shares are duly documented and kept. There's due full compliance, and I declare that management has never put an obstacle to any information about invoicing and documentation and information and according to the comprehensive employee benefits and social security for all the base salaries has been prepared from the registry and accounting documentation. As of 31st of December, the company is not overdue to the system of the comprehensive social security according to Article 4 of Decree 96 of 25 that modifies numeral 1.2.2 of Decree 24 of 2015. The external auditor will apply this regulation in developing the Commerce Code related to the evaluation of compliance of bylaws and the evaluation of internal control. And this, according to Article 1.2.1 of this decree, for the purpose of the application of Article 1.2.1.2, it wouldn't be necessary that the external auditor present separate reports, but it has to express an opinion of each one of the subjects contained in it. In the technical aspect of accounting, technical explanations for this purpose, based on the evidence obtained in the development of my fiscal audit during 2021, in my opinion, no one draws my attention that makes me think that behavior and acts of managers do not adjust to decisions of the Assembly and their proper internal controls, preservation of custody of the goods of the entity and third parties. Olga Liliana Pinto signs, designated by Deloitte & Touch in 2022, in February 25, 2022. You will find our full report in the financial statements, which express the exact same thing that I just mentioned. Thank you very much. Thank you. Seventh, approval of financial separated and and consolidated financial statements. Does the Assembly approve the financial statements separate and consolidated as of December 31st, 2021? Anyone that is not in agreement? Someone that is not in agreement? Good morning. Daniela Alejandra Hoyos, Citizens ID 102818 in representation of Fondo Bursátiles E-Shares Colcab, City of New York, and E-Shares MSC. I abstain from voting. Thank you very much. So financial statements are approved as of December 31st, 2020. Presentation and approval of the presentation for dividends and the proposition on distribution of dividends. Proposition on distribution of dividends expressed in dollars. General Assembly, March 31st, 2022. The profits from 2021 that reached 43,271 are proposed to be distributed in the following fashion. Net profit $43.2 million, $43.2 million, $42 million for new projects. Reserve for protection of assets $1 million. Total $43.2 million. We propose to transfer from reserves from previous years for payment dividends not $19.3 million for a quarterly dividend of during April 2020, during 2022, upon 299,737,402 shares in circulation payable on the anticipated quarter 20 days of April 22 or July 20 and October 20 of 2022 and January 20 of 2023. So it would be 3 successive payments. While we give you the exact datum, the payment of every installment will be done to all shares in circulations at the date of payment, those that are registered in the corresponding shareholders' registries and books in the corresponding period. The payment of dividends, there's no interest rates. It will be made in pesos of the official exchange rate in the date of the payment. Go ahead. Thank you very much. And again, even though I haven't specially welcomed you and saluted you, above all, as I've done in all the previous assemblies, I want to congratulate the board and management, emphasizing the excellent solidity of the company and the extraordinary our company, and especially the excellent liquidity and financial healthy financial well presented report you give us, ease of mind, but especially great expectations for growth and future profits, and the sustainability report is particularly valuable. But with all due respect, with complete frankly, I say that it seems absolutely surprising the dividend policy that you're putting to our consideration. I'm going to explain why it surprises me, and it really doesn't. In the year 2021, the total dividends that was paid to us was 0.0696 exactly, practically 6 cents, 6 cents with 96, 6 cents, almost 7 cents. Let's round it up to 7 cents, right? 7 cents. This was the result of a payment of quarterly installments and an extraordinary installment. In this year, what you're presenting to us adds is 0.64, almost, instead of 7, 6. You're going to pay us 6.4 instead of 7. So that is equivalent to that there is a decrease, a net decrease in dividend payments of 6.9%. And it's equivalent to 44.8% of profits that the company has. Profits that we know are sensibly affected, but you clearly explained managing depreciations and also the liquidity of the company. So please, it's important to have clear the policy, the dividend policy that you're proposing us has a decrease of 6.9%. Well, and let's say that what is the significance of this? I consider it very impositive, or the equivalent, the cash equivalent, of $63 million. I invite you to have that figure in mind. $63.1 million from 2021 was exactly 63.5 million from 2020. So this company has a tremendous financial solidity and cash and healthy cash position. What has happened? And this is simply, I'm going to put this on the table just as let's put a scenario on the table for your consideration. Let's suppose, or let's assume, that what you're proposing to us in the quarterly dividend of 0.162, let's suppose that we're going to have that there's going to be an additional payment, an extraordinary payment that would be in the year we would be paying 8 cents of dividend for shareholders, 8 cents and not 7. What is the meaning of that, or the impact? This means that 8 cents, the figures of these companies are easy to understand in dollars, because here we have 299 is 300 million. Basically. So let's multiply 8 cents for 300 million shareholders or shares is $24 million. In handkerchief calculation, 24, and we're going to distribute $19.3 million instead of 24. It's a $5 million difference. What is the meaning of $5 million for this company with an extraordinary financial solidity? Let's put it in these terms. I said already that as of December 31st, the net surplus, cash surplus, was $63 million. And here, what I simply request to consider is $5 million more for dividends. That's 8% of the cash flow that the company had available in December 31st. And let's say it in other terms. What is that vis-a-vis EBITDA? If we see in the year 2020, it was 188 billion. Last year had a considerable drop to 155. What is the meaning of those $5 million, additional $5 million vis-a-vis EBITDA? Is the EBITDA of 10 days, the EBITDA of 10 days to pay the shareholders, the EBITDA of 10 days, a little more, and to pay an extraordinary dividend equivalent to a quarterly installment, that's 55% of profits, and has no affectation whatsoever on the extraordinary. It was not affect the extraordinary financial health and solidity. It's not going to be paid. It's going to be paid to all. In reality, it doesn't. I mean, I think that a company of this solidity and health, I don't understand why it's presenting this decreasing 6.9%. So I kindly and humbly and respectfully invite you to consider this operation, the review in the board, this proposition to distribute dividends that you're telling us that I mean 5%. No, it's a decrease. It's a decrease of 6.9%, and it's not an increase. Thank you very much. Apparently, there's consensus. The comment that I would make is the profits of the company went down. The profits went down. If the profits come down, it's not not well seen by the market. If you increase dividends, that's the market perspective. Remember that we're listed in 2 exchanges. The policy is to distribute 40% in past years, and we're distributing 44. It's not well read and seen to go to Toronto, lure investors and attract them, and now show a dividend. They're not going to see this kindly. But with due respect, sir, it's even worse to show in Toronto that the company was paying higher dividends than now. It's another way to look at it. Not because profits are lower. The psychology of investors, I've seen independent from the result of the profit investors, this company has an extraordinary financial solidity and cash flow. So it would be surprising, maybe that's my reading, that in a sector with the level of gold prices that we have a that Mineros decreased. I'm seeing the headline. I'm seeing the headline in the press, decreasing dividends. So frankly, it's my opinion, but I don't see the logic of decreasing dividends if we are getting this situation in liquidity. Go ahead. The mic is circulating. Good morning. My name is Mauricio Toro. I concur. I second the motion. I fully second the motion, and I follow even from his beginning statements in recognition of congratulate the management and the board. To all of you, I congratulate you. But in the dividends issue, I would like to add myself, and I would like to add the following comments. We've been saying that this dividend distribution corresponds to 44.8%. It might be wrong, 44.8%, right? There is a policy, which is Article 240 of the law of 1995 in Colombian law, that says that for the distribution of profits, we require a minimum quorum of 70 or a minimum vote of 78% of the shares, right? So that the company distributes below 50%. And what is the reason of that regulation? Or is the protection of shareholders? That as a principle, the idea of the regulation, they don't distribute less than 50% unless more than 78% of the shareholders vote. So Colombian regulation. So I would expect that that wouldn't be lower to 50%. I don't know. Even the calculation, you took that in mind of the 5 million, we get to 50%. I don't know, with that 5 million pesos that you mentioned, the gentleman that spoke before I did, do we get to 50%? Yes, apparently he did. With the tremendous strength that the company is showing, We love this company. We believe in this company. We bet on it and we invest in it, and we expect that the market values it as it is. But I don't understand how Mineros, with this scenario of the mining industry, with 1,930 per ounce of gold, when last year was 1,800, he cannot pay a cent, one more cent to with these prices of gold for 300 million shares. It just doesn't quite fit with the situation, at least in my mind. I think that the underlying idea is more, it's a slight increase that I believe should simply and using the slogan. The slogan of Mine is for the well-being of all. That's the slogan of Mine. The slogan for the well-being of all. And in that well-being, all should be, the shareholders should be included. No, we're not changing the policy. We're not changing the policy of more or less 40%. That is not. Many years has been the company has been for many years distributing around 40%, more or less 40. I first of all, I agree the clear presentation that the first presenter made about the increase of the dividends, and an additional argument is that we grew net worth by 35%. We're asking $5 more million in the year. In addition to that, if we compare that the shareholders should be favored compared to what the managers made and the board of directors make, is the most expensive board in the country. We don't think that we have to decrease these salaries. We're not asking for decreasing shareholders, managers' salaries or board fees, but we're simply asking to increase dividends a little bit. These are the most expensive in Colombia. It's a company, Bancolombia or Grupo Aval or Ecopetrol, and 2 years we demanded, when they had no members demanded by the stock exchange from Toronto. So we created what we called we don't see that in Ecopetrol or Grupo Bancolombia or Grupo Aval. No, in the New York Stock Exchange doesn't force Americans in the boards in these companies. But we were sold the idea that in the online we couldn't protest because we had a virtual assembly, but it's 10 times more in fees but they used to cost in 2019 234 million pesos in 2019. In the year 21 we paid 2,000 plus billion. I mean, $60,000. It's just too much money, I think, when we compared the reality of Colombia. But we as shareholders, we cannot increase. So the argument should put on the table. I think the arguments from the previous gentleman are clear. If I understand, have to tell you that I do not agree with the position. I do not consider that the salaries are outside of the market. Within on the contrary, in the morning we were in the board, we are highly competitive. Actually, we're being stolen. Talent is being stolen. We had to protect competitively in the market our top talent. And the statement about the board of directors fees, we copy them from Toronto. We're in the lower scale in Toronto, the lower. That's the implication of being in Toronto, of participating in that market. No, I'm comparing it to other companies in Colombia. It's 100th. Suramericana, Banco de Bogotá, Grupo Aval, Banco de Colombia, and Ecopetrol, Promigas. Larger companies that don't pay this. $5,000 for or $90,000 to board members is too much money for the other companies or groups don't pay that. It's too much money in dollars, and we are in Colombia. Let's not compare to Toronto. Toronto, in addition to that, we haven't seen it reflected in the share value. In the 2 years that we've been with this board, the value has gone from 4,600 pesos to 3,800 pesos, and 3,400 today, when the issues were done at 4,000 plus. What is the value added of the board for this in favor of the shareholders? Well, I would like to refer mainly to the last statement, which needs to shed some light and clarity points. And the process, the listing process is going to take time. This is a bet on the future. Price formation in Colombia is no secret. In Colombia's stock exchange has led that many companies, including Mineros, has a capitalization below its net worth and its true valuation. What we've been working in the board to list in Toronto is to looking for that ultimate increased valuation. We're not going to get this in a month or 2 months. This is not an overnight process. That we have to be clear about that. Because to achieve that ultimate end of increasing valuation, the estimated value is that we should have in circulation in Colombia more than $100 million in shares, at least. And right now we only have $23 million in shares, $24 million in shares. So it is a process. So when we want to make the issues, we couldn't have the option, so we couldn't place $100 million without the company to have the need of the cash flow. The market wouldn't have received it positively. So what the company is doing is a strategy, a gradual strategy and process that intends to achieve this liquidity and valuation and appreciation in time with the least cost possible and the least dilution for you. So it is a well thought. Maybe you don't perceive it in the short term, but this is the strategy that we have approved. We made an issuance that was sufficiently small, but not for dilution to be small and minimal. Part of the offering in Colombia was part of it so that you could, those that could buy in Colombia. So it was all, we tried to facilitate it to the less dilution process. What are we working this year? We're working in promoting the company with foreign investors in Toronto. We're doing permanent roadshows. We're working opportunities for alliances, partnerships, JVs, or mergers with other companies so that if we increase liquidity in Toronto, is through is adding value, not diluting share value. And we're trying to adjust the mechanism to be able to move packages of our shares from Colombia to Toronto. When this happens, better prices, and when better prices in Toronto are there. As paradoxically, this week incidentally is happening. It hasn't happened in the last 2 months, but it's a long process. It's a long-term process. It's a process that's difficult to adjust to respond to the interest of everybody and in every moment. But I want to leave clarity about this from management and from the board of directors. The only purpose we have is to achieve, to unlock this value for you, additional valuation. And the way we're doing it, we're not looking for anything different. But the thing is, it's not exact science. It isn't. It is not easy. And it's not overnight to achieve this balance. At some point we said, let's make an issuance of $70 million. We did think about it. If we weren't, the dilution would have been too large. So precisely thinking in you, in the current share, and the company didn't have an investment project to use these proceeds. So this is not going to be a short nor an easy pass or exempt of surprises and obstacles. But that's where we're at. But I want to tell you all, as management, that's the single-minded purpose that at the end of this journey unlock value for you and increase the valuation of this company. We have no benefit beyond working. There's no other benefit. That's the ultimate end. That's what stimulates us, and what our aim is to be in 2 markets, the main markets, one with more liquidity, better understanding of this of this business, and better price formations that we can unlock the value that you have trapped in this business. And about the board, with Toronto's market not only demands certain profiles, but also requirements, obligations, and compliance. So the person we got is the head of the audit committee. He has to sign the financial statements, and frankly, I tell you, we have learned enormously from this new member. But these for the Toronto are very low in the low end, because in Toronto it's understand that boards have a huge responsibility, much higher than in Colombia. We have had about 7 board meetings. It's heavy work, Anna, formal meetings, paying fees. But we have more than 7 online votes, and we don't pay for this. It's unpaid work, permanent follow-up and monitoring for the formation of the company. So Frankly speaking, as management, I think that the board of directors is a top-notch. Actually, it's like if we were paying for a board member with what a consultant would do. Much more expensive than in Colombia, but much worthwhile. The companies that you're talking about don't have shares in Toronto. They're just not listed. They have ADRs. It's different. They're not listed. We're the first company ever in Colombia that has a regular listed with a dual listing outside Colombia. So we're making history, and with the main listing in Colombia. So they were breaking ground. About dividend proposal, it's a conservative proposal. I know that. Why? Because we are working in projects. These projects will require capital, will require cash. The company is going to look for financing soon on internal resources. So we're being very prudent. When I got to Mineros, we had in cash about $60 million that had accumulated to make investments in Nicaragua, I believe then, or 1 or 2 years before. The process we're going through the same pipeline, the same process. As I said, the company cannot grow but if it doesn't develop projects. This is the natural nature of this animal. We cannot announce these projects until they're certified in the law 143-101, but 43-101. But the current situation of the company, what is convenient is to move in these projects, move forward, and maintain a healthy cash position because we'll have to invest in the medium term. Of course, but the decision of your decision is your decision, gentlemen, as shareholders. But I want to explain the justification of dividends and the analysis we did at the board and in the committees, and what this process has been, and what, in our humble opinion, is needed. There's a lot of work ahead in management and from the board and in the board to give trust and confidence to Toronto. But many things are different there. We're in a new journey, and I want to emphasize what I said at the beginning. The only purpose that stimulates us is to unlock value for you, because we're convinced that there's trapped value and hidden value for the shareholders. We're not going to achieve it in a couple of months. We're only going to achieve it in the long term, doing arduous, disciplined work, making this company known, explaining its particularities, and generating trust and confidence in the market. Thank you, Dr. Andres. Yes, that idea of the financing and the funding for projects such as a limit to pay dividends. I frankly, the dividend, I think it's a little bit of a. I think we should. You mentioned this company has we have very minimum leverage, financial leverage, and indebtedness. We have extraordinarily solid financially, and instead of assuming that we paid off liabilities, $5 million is only 8% of the liquidity surplus in December 31st, which is equal to the one we had a year ago. Why? Because this company is highly cash generator. It's a cash generator. So with the EBITDA data from last year, those $5 million that are equivalent to practically 1 more cent, it's an EBITDA that makes this company in 10 days. This EBITDA is 10 days of EBITDA. So you have the power. Of course, I understand we can vote, but it's also within your... but the financial solidity of this company deserves that you take a look at this and propose your shareholders a little closer to the financial reality of the company. I hear you, I listen to you, and I understand where you're coming from about the solidity of the balance sheet. But dividends shouldn't be linked to the balance, but the P&L and net cash. The company for which I represent, the company here, I mean, the one, it would be convenient. I mean, we're also shareholders. Of course, we would be convenient, but respectfully, I tell you, it's logical that you think in increasing dividends when net profits went down is not the message for TSX. It's not the right message for investors. Dividends should be determined by the net dividends, net worth. So this would be going against the value construction, but there's not an increase in 5%. I'm reading that in the screen. 5% increase. We're decreasing in 6.9%. Maybe that statement is the one that should be revised. No, it's your decision. I respect. No. It's together. It's together. It's not something that we will impose. Absolutely not. But frankly, let's take a look. My opinion is negative. I would like if you could take a look, or maybe a vote, and then we know what's going to happen. We know that is at least to have in the minutes and in the record that an important percentage of shareholders and a percentage of the shareholders consider that what you're proposing, it doesn't go along with the financial reality. It doesn't go with the financial reality of this company or the liquidity position. Uh, it is the decision of all the shareholders. It's not decision of management what relates to the dividends. It's the shareholders who decide. I would also would be put on the tip. Sometimes we talk about what are the needs of the company, what we've seen and so on. And the question is, have you asked what are the needs of the shareholders? What are the needs of the shareholders in a country that last year had an inflation of 5.6%, and this year we're going to be about 8% or so. So there are needs in both sides, the business, but also shareholders. My calling to all of you is to let's compromise. Let's not just to look at the needs of the business only. It's also there's also a need to look at the needs of the shareholders, and therefore I go back to the slogan of Mineros, for the well-being of all. I don't know. Why don't we make a 5-10 minute break? Let's take a look at this. Let's have a 10 minute break. Let's 10 minutes. Let's give us 10 minutes. 10 minutes, and we'll take a look at that, and we'll get back in. Hello, I believe we're ready. We were ready to start again. We're ready to begin again. All right, I guess I believe we're ready to take the issue. We've made several considerations we were discussing here, and we're willing to move the proposal, and change it. That would be to give one more cent, as you would be $3 million. If you think we can find some compromise, and not $5 but $3 million. So Andres will explain. So, what would be the comparison between the 2 years? Last year, we paid a dividend of 6 with 16 cents in the year, and a extraordinary dividend of 0.8 cents in the first quarter. The proposal this year is to increase the dividend, the ordinary dividend, regular to 0.647, 6 cents with 47, and the extraordinary to 1 cent. That is, we went from 6.96 cents last year to 7.47 cents. It's an increase in dollars of 7.30%, 7.3% in dollars. So, making this clear, I would ask the Honorable Assembly, would you agree with a new proposal for dividend distribution? Do you approve? Go ahead. I agree with the first presenter. 8 cents would be the minimal, but it doesn't make a presentation where it's just 1.3% of the $5 million would be, or 20 million pesos. 20 billion pesos is less than the impact of obsolete inventories in Argentina, or 9 billion pesos in consultants. So this is not too much money for Mineros, but it does hit us strongly. So I consider that it's not logical to be proposed. We know that you were going to propose half, but it shouldn't be like that, and it shouldn't be that every time that we come here, you propose we have to sort of horse trade it would be more, I mean, the budget to be more, but not to come here to create more than half an hour of discussion and to try to defend positions, to then decide basically, Mr. Chairman, because you have the majority of the company to decide what you give us, as if it was a favor to give the benefits that we have a right to. It seems that it's 7.5. It really has no presentation. I believe that, but the assembly is yours, because the assembly is yours, your majority. So basically, here is more of a formality to produce quorum, but basically, to me, it's a ridiculous proposal. Well, we're going to a language. This is a language I'm not interested in having the conversation with this type of language. I ask the honorable members of the board. You can go ahead. This is not the ambiance and the type of exchange that we are willing to maintain here in a respectful way. Good morning. My name is Álvaro Corredor, Citizens ID 5,767,000. I'm representing Colfondos with the pension funds, Colfondos of Colombia, Class Colombia, Class Avanza, see all these investment funds, Class Avanza Mayor Riesgo, Class Avanza Moderado, all these funds, Class Dinámico Fund, Pensiones Obligatorias Colfondos, Cesantías Colfondos, Mandatory Conservador Fondos, and Colfondos Modera. All of these are funds. Translation parenthesis. We're going to leave in the record that we abstain from voting in this point. We abstain from voting. Is there any other person who will abstain or vote against? Good morning. Daniela Alejandra Osos, identified citizens ID 1028 and 18921, representing foreign investors, foreign funds. I abstain from vote. So there's two. And it's not that you put me as if you award the decision. We all decide. That's precisely why you open the discussion. There's no shareholders that are less than others because dividends, everyone is given what they deserve. I present in consideration of the assembly. Do you accept it or do you not? Yes. Who doesn't accept it? Who doesn't accept it? I would like to put in the minutes that I don't agree with the way in which it's being presented and the way in which you treat minority shareholders. We are completely minority. This company, we're all minority. No one has control of this company. There's no majority shareholders. Colpatria has been a shareholder. We're all minority shareholders. No one has control of this company. We need quorum. We need majorities. So put the percentage, so the dividend is approved by the majority then. 9 point, approval of reform to the policy of compensation, remuneration, and performance, and election and performance and compensation of the board of directors. We subject to your consideration the following changes proposed vis-a-vis the current policy, with the purpose of achieving to follow compliance with best practices in Colombia and frame it in a competency model. We propose to change remuneration and performance in the following aspects, which were communicated to all shareholders 15 days before this presentation. First, we propose to authorize the board of directors to make adjustments to the skill sets and competencies when it's necessary to respond to the reality of the market and the needs of the company, without going against the faculties and the powers that the shareholders assembly has. And the policy, the corporate governance and sustainability committee is responsible to evaluate the independence of every member according to the parameters of applicable laws. Third, to clarify criteria related to independence and evaluation, and demand candidates to present a declaration that accredits their independence according to the policy of election, performance, and remuneration, and to adjust the skill sets and competency matrix to adapt to the current needs of the business, to the current needs of the company. With the approval, the adjustment necessary afterwards could be carried out directly by the board of directors. Does the Honorable Assembly approve the policy for election, performance, and compensation of the board of directors? Yes. Anyone that is not in agreement? Consultative vote of the board of directors. According to the policy of elections, performance, and compensation of the board of directors, in this point, we request to vote a non-binding consultative vote for every member of the list. This consultative vote is a practice adopted to comply with the TSX and Canadian regulation, according to which boards should be voted individually by member. The results of this vote will only be used with the purposes evaluation of Section C of the election policy and performance and remuneration of the board of directors, and will not have any other effect. As follows, we invite you to vote in favor or against as a function of the individual performance of every board member. I'm going to be mentioning one by one all the board members, the principals, to express for you, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, to express your votes. Eduardo Pacheco. Anyone abstains from voting? Second, Dr. Dieter W. Jens. Unanimously voted. Jose Fernando Llano. Any abstention or any abstainee? For Santiago Perdomo. All in favor? Any against? Dr. Juan Carlos Páez. All in favor? Any against? Any abstain votes? None. Fifth, Monica Jimenez. All in favor? No abstain. No one abstains. Dr. Sergio Restrepo Izaza. Anyone abstaining? All in favor? Alberto Mejia Hernandez. All in favor? Any abstained? Ninth, Beatriz Orrantia. All in favor? No. No one abstains, so we proceed to confirm the board. Next point, election of the Board of Directors for 2022-2023. For this assembly, we presented two lists, the one made by the current members of the board, as is detailed the person that the secretary just read, and the second list by an alternative member by one of our shareholders, as we will detail, Doctora Lucia Taborda Giraldo, with an additional member. Let's show the list. Let's show both lists. This is the list for one, the list one. This is list one. Both were available to all the shareholders to the website before this meeting. In compliance with applicable regulation in remuneration, election, and performance, the Governance and Sustainability Committee has evaluated the qualities of all the profiles of the professional and functional professionality, diversity, independence, skill sets, incompatibilities. The Corporate Governance Committee and Sustainability assessed all the candidates, and they are fully capable of fulfilling their functions according to the Colombian regulation. We're using electoral quotient and in the information circle bulletin according to Canadian regulation. Amongst other things, to remind you, when we talk about the board of directors and the fees, we're well aware of the higher costs, but precisely that's we have 6 boards a year, less board sessions a year. The profiles of the members were sent to all the shareholders and are available in the website, so we can vote either one of these lists. You vote for list number 1 or list number 2? Who would she replace, or what is the complete list? Only her? What is the rest of the list of the first thing we would like to know? What are the other members in the other, and what are the merits that number 1 to be re-elected or to present for re-election, and what are the arguments for re-election? What is the merits and the arguments? Because so far what I've seen is the results are not the best, and we've lost in the balance sheet. We are in high-risk countries, and I haven't seen any I didn't hear anything where at the management level we said that we're going to protect our investments in Nicaragua or in Chile or in Argentina and possibly in Colombia. So if tomorrow the left is elected in Colombia, we're in zero. So I haven't heard in the presentation a proposal either of management or of the board that says what is the plan to protect these investments in those high-risk countries, and what is the merit to deserve re-election. Well, I'm going to initially refer to the last part of your statement. Your question statement, last statement, is the risk of mining activity and the specific risk of Colombia. Since seven or eight, since 2013, about 9 years ago. Since 9 years ago, the company diversified its geography precisely to diversify risk, precisely because we consider it as a way of mitigating risk, a political risk specifically. So it's in fact a risk management strategy. Right now we're in 4 countries instead of 1. And we've produced under this high risk, of course, temporarily in several of these fronts and of these geographies, but we've considered that that strategy has worked, because when the risk increases in one country, it doesn't increase in another one, not simultaneously. There's no country free of increasing political risk, not one. Until 6 months or a year ago, Chile was one of the best geographies in the world. But today, it's in a delicate situation because there is a constitutional assembly that is proposing substantial changes to the policy related to mining activities. So the decision that the company made was to be in several geographies as a way precisely to manage political risk, as a way of protective investment of all of you, of every single one of you. The procedure to appoint the board of directors, precisely because we are in Toronto Stock Exchange, and also to answer to the guidelines from Código País survey, is that the proposal has to be presented with a certain anticipation. And the vote of Toronto is done by proxy. Many of them already voted. They voted before this assembly. When the information was received, when the board of directors made an evaluation of the board of directors by a third party, which is called ATK Kearney, that information was available at a objective third party. The evaluation of the third party, ATK Kearney, is that the board of directors was an ideal board, well prepared, well trained, and competent to fulfill its function and responsibility listed in 2 markets. That's why the proposal was to maintain it intact as it is. That was the decision of the shareholders that participated in the board of directors, and in general the one that was communicated to investors. Now afterwards, an important investor said, I want to propose an additional person, a specific person. That proposal arrived when we couldn't try to agree on a single list, because we had already vanquished and passed the deadlines where we had to publish in Toronto the list for the board of directors. So what we reported to Toronto is that there was a single list. That's what we report. When we reported there was a new list, some investors in Toronto had already voted, and that we cannot agree on a single list. So what we did was to continue follow the normal procedure, to verify to do the due diligence she fulfills, and that's why we're proposing both lists. We cannot change them because we would go against votes that were given by the shareholders in Toronto. I hope that I clarify why this happened. There is not a reflection of any discrepancy or discarding anybody whatsoever. Both the current members of the one as a second member are members that are ideal. They fulfill the profile from Toronto and perfectly feasible and electable. How will the definitive board? We determine by the quotient and residue. What we have to do is to vote for either one or the other. We hope that the Deseval would give us the scrutiny and would give us the definitive confirmation of the board, or I hope that I clarify the questions. So we can proceed to the vote. How is the procedure of the vote? Those that vote for list 1, you can vote just for one of the two. You can vote as number 1. List 2. List 2. Can you come to the table, those that are voting for list 2, for board list? It's easier to count the votes. So go to approach the table, and we will register your votes. Thank you very much. For list 2, Dr. Sergio, go ahead. Member of the board of directors, Dr. Sergio, go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to clarify one point. Earlier discussion when we said there was about some errors supposedly in the book. In page 108 of the first part, there's 2. Actually, there are separated financial statements and consolidated financial statements. The first 108 of the separated financial statements, there is an explanation about the issuance of shares in Toronto. All the explanation is in dollars. The issuance is at 90 cents on the dollar, and the number of shares issued in Colombia, and the number of shares issued in the TSX in Toronto. And the note continues, and in the green and light lines, which are the figures that go to the financial statements, the figures are in pesos and are correct. Correct. I wanted to simply give this clarification for the record because there was some sort of a feeling of confusion over it. There is no error absolutely in the books, and the report is perfectly well presented. Is there any abstainee or any abstaining vote? All right. While they're counting the votes, I would like to add a message to complement. We were also asked why management had not given you a vision or of the future or growth of the company. To be listed in the stock exchange, to be listed in a mining company in the market is precisely restricts the capacity to give disclosure and information. It's a high risk business. We start with paragraph saying, bear in mind that mining is a high risk business. We have to say that in disclosures, and and everything we tell the market has to fulfill a standard or compliance that is called NY 43101. Even feasibility of projects cannot be disclosed unless we cannot say to anybody or to the market in Colombia, neither in Colombia, that we have a project to do a mine is going to produce so much and so on and so forth. We are forbidden to do it by law until it is certified by N1 43101. Just to answer you, why does it have to be certified in N1 43101? Because mining activity in the past has been subject for speculation and and investors have lost money in the past. So the Securities Commission of Ontario, the authority, the watchdog of securities in Ontario, restricts it. We ask you for your understanding. We're more reserved until things are not absolutely compliant and certified by N1 4311. We cannot. We're forbidden. When you certify a project, a mining project, to explain, it's certified bearing in mind many resources and reserves that have to be certified. These resources have to be certified in the last moment. So the company is always going to be very reserved but certain until it can give news and disclose it to the market. And it's anguishing, yes, I agree. It's anguishing, it's an additional pressure on us, on the board, but we are going to appeal to your understanding. We have an agenda for growth, a growth pipeline and projects in every country and investment in every country. We're trying to fulfill this regulation, be compliant, and be attractive for a market that knows the mining business in Canada, is willing to pay a better price for the shares to unlock value for you. Go ahead. Dr. Andres, yes, I fully understand. But you know, one thing to the shareholders, we don't forget the 5-year plan. The 5-year plan several years ago that had an objective of 500,000 ounces of gold. I believe that the truth is that the trend, I remember well back then, you presented in several meetings, Medellin and in Bogota. I believe there's a big gap of what we intend. I think it's important that the diversification, I agree, it's important we have to understand the circumstances of the pandemic, but the shareholders, we don't forget the target of 500K, the 500K ounces. That guidance still persists and is valid still. And with the organic growth, we will achieve it. We can achieve it in the certain. We cannot tell you when. We cannot tell you when. We're forbidden by regulation. We maintain that we cannot tell you when. Porvenir, DCP, exploration we're doing in Colombia, and interesting targets we have in Nicaragua would be the path to get to the 500K. But we cannot tell you when. It's going to take time. And we want to be conservative and cautious with not to exceed expectations. And we continue exploring M&A and mergers. As a result of the listing, we can get there before. But I cannot be more detailed. This is the maximum detail that I can give you. I can tell you we have a pipeline. We're working on it, but I cannot tell you how much and when. So the company is a very restrictive environment, different from what we were before the listing. We have to comply. So thank you for your understanding. Don't misinterpret us, please. This is how we have to comply. We have to be disciplined because historically, of course, there were mining companies in Toronto that make positive announcements. People invested, and people lost a lot of money. That's what the regulator, the value, the watchdog, the SEC in Ontario, they're very, very cautious. Very, I understand, but it's the regulation we have to comply. But remember, but it's good to remind us. But it's good for us you to remind us. We accept your reminder. We know that the target exists. We go to the election. The count. What about the count? Oh no, this is lower than the national government, the registrar's office. Should we tell about Simon's? Yeah, if you want to save your time and to better manage time, we're going to several something at the end, but we'll do it now. A shareholder wrote saying that he could not be in the assembly. He was going to be connected virtually, but he wanted to ask a question, and we want to answer that question. I'm going to read it to you. 1 second, let me read his question. The shareholders is Simon Rubinstein, and he said as follows. What is the position of the board vis-a-vis conflicts of interest in the approval of the price of the recent issuance of stock, because it was approved price against the interest of shareholders when it's below the value in books of the company, and particularly minority shareholders which didn't participate in this decision with direct information about this process. This question had already been asked by letter, and we answered by letter on December 29th last year. In what relates to price setting, the answer was to begin the offering, and the price determination of share subscription was structured in full compliance with applicable legislation and corresponding regulation in Colombia and in Canada. Indeed, after having expert advice and consultants, it fulfilled the interest of Mineros and was fully reasonable for the effects of achieving the effective placements and quotes of shares in the Canadian market. Following Canadian law, uses and practice of that value and that stock exchange or market. What is saying the Canadian market works different. The Canadian market works different. And the ease of mind I want to give is the issue was fully compliant, following the same terms of the median and the average of the Canadian market for these type of companies. With regards to the conflict of interest, this should be indicated that the board of directors follow the duties, fiduciary duties and trust values in evaluating, designing, and implementing the offered adopted decisions by the board of directors that were approved unanimously in no moment whatsoever represented a conflict of interest to the members that integrated. On the contrary, in terms of the offer, were set carefully to benefit all shareholders of the company in full equal conditions, compliant with Article 23 of the Law 2022 of 1995. The final result of the issuance, what we placed in Toronto, the over allotment, and what was allotted in Colombia, the over allotment, show that the price setting was right on the dot, similar to many other similar companies of Mineros in TSX. Every market has its own rules and style. I'm going to I'll be out of context. The bank, what is Banco Nacional de Canada, the Bank of Canada, the Central Bank of Canada, just placed a discount with Montreal, the Bank of Montreal. It's a well-recognized bank. They just a placement with a discount. It's the normal practice in Canada. So, where you go, you should do as the Romans do. If you go to Rome, you should do as the Romans do. So, I want to insist, our only interest is to benefit every single one of you as shareholders. Thank you. We have the results from the votes, 143,806 and 37 million for list number 2. So 143 million 0.8 for list 1 and 9 million abstained. With this, I asked the gentleman from Desaggregate the calculation of the list and the percentages. So the board is made up, when there's a single, in the second, it would be made by the first 10 members of plan plus the new member of list 2. So Eduardo Pacheco, Dieter Yen, José Fernando Llano, Santiago Perdono, Juan Carlos Páez, Mónica Jiménez, Sergio Restrepo, Alberto Mejía, and Lucia Taborda Giraldo would be added to the board. So a new board of directors. I especially thank Beatriz Urrantia. Thank you very much for Beatriz. That helped us very much in the board. Very especially grateful. Setting fees for the board of directors. The proposal evaluated by the governance committee and presented to you is that we maintain the fees, the current fees, not to have any increase of fees in dollars, and to maintain the fees for the next 2 years of the duration of the board. Does the assembly approve the proposal? Anyone that is not in agreement? Anyone not in agreement? Good afternoon, Daniela Alejandra. With Citizens ID 102818 on behalf of Universal Investment and Global Investment, I abstain. Do we agree that anyone is not in agreement with the fees for the board that was just read by the chairman? So it is so approved. 13th, propositions and other discussion topics. Any one of you has any proposition, any other subject for discussion? Having no hand, I thank you very, very much. Thank you very much. And we conclude the assembly for 2022. Thank you, gentlemen.